In the previous section of the video, we had discussed about services and messages. We defined services saying that it's nothing but self-contained business functionality. We also defined messages saying that how it helps us to build a decoupled communication mechanism between two heterogeneous systems. Now, these two entities, that is services and messages, are nothing but building blocks for service-oriented architecture. So what we'll do is that we'll list down that from services and messages, or I'll rather say, what are the standards or what are the compulsory characteristic services and messages should follow. So the first one, services should be self-contained and should communicate using messages. So in other words, whatever service you have defined, remember, services are not classes and components, and we are going to discuss ahead that why services are not classes and components. So basically, services are self-contained business logic, and they should only communicate with other services using messages. Now, these messages can be in XML, it can be in some kind of generalized IT standard, IT messaging standard. Services should be able to define themselves. In other words, for instance, there's some service which is hosted for temperature measurement. So what I would like to do is that probably I can write a small program, which would go to the service and tell, hey service, what you can do. The service will reply back me saying, okay, these are my members, these are my methods, these are my properties, and this is what you can do. You can call these methods and get your output. So in other words, services should be self-explanatory. Services should be maintained in a repository where we can find them. So basically, if you say that, okay, your organization is having 10 or 15 services, what you can do is that you can put them into one centralized location where anybody can come and find them. So services should be in a centralized repository, where any program, any application can come, find them, use them, and then serve their purpose. We should be able to orchestrate services. In other words, let's say that I have a security service. You can see on the video, I have a security service and I have an order processing service. Now what I should be able to do is that I should be able to orchestrate the service. In other words, I can place the security service after the order processing, or I can place in the vice versa fashion. So in other words, I can first check that the user is valid and then place the order, or I can just put this order here, this service here, and put the security service after the order processing service. So I can first place the order and then check if he's a valid user. So in other words, I should be able to define workflows using services. Message formats should be standard and should work across platforms. We had discussed that messages are the way to attain interoperability between heterogeneous languages. So definitely whatever message formats you are using for your service should be standard one. For example, if we are talking about Microsoft Web Service, they use a standard SOAP format. So the message format for communication between the services should be standard and should work across platforms. Messages should be able to communicate asynchronously, reliably, and in a secured way. So these are some more extra characteristics which you would like from our services to perform, and we will see that how we can achieve this using WCF. Messages should be able to describe and discover a service in a standard manner. So messages, the whatever message system or whatever message protocol you're going to use for your service should be able to describe and discover a service. We'll come to this, how basically messages can describe a service and how they can help to discover a service. So we have defined services saying that they are self-contained, they communicate using messages, and they can be orchestrated. We have defined messages saying that they should follow industry standard, they should be cross-platform, they should communicate asynchronously, they should be reliable, they should be secured, and the messages should help to describe and discover a service. Friends, services plus messages is SOA. So now let's define SOA finally. SOA is an architectural style for building business application using loosely coupled services which act like black boxes and can be orchestrated to achieve a specific functionality by linking together. Okay, that's a big definition I've given here, but basically over and overall, SOA is first thing. SOA is not a technology. In other words, SOA is not a tool or something. SOA is architectural style. It's architecture thinking or architecture methodology where you don't think in terms of classes, or you don't think in terms of functions, but rather you think in terms of services. So where you don't communicate in terms of method calls or RPC calls or network calls or protocol calls, but you talk in terms of messages. So basically you can say that SOA shifts your thinking from classes and objects to services, and the communication mechanism, it shifts from the normal thinking where we think in terms of HTTP or probably FTP or probably any kind of communication protocol. It says, okay, forget about all this protocol, just think in terms of messages. So basically you can say that SOA is an architectural style for building business application where we can have loosely coupled architecture using services and messages. So I hope that this video was useful, and catch you up in the next coming session where we are going to concentrate mainly on how we can use WCF to achieve this services plus messages kind of architecture and build our application in a more loosely coupled format.